Melissa Wilson took a deep breath as she gazed out the kitchen window. The autumn scenery in Westchester County was breathtakingly beautiful. Trees with red and yellow leaves adorned the garden of her single-family home. Looking at such a view, Melissa felt a comfortable sense of security knowing her mother would visit today as well. "Mom, what time is Grandma coming?" asked 7-year-old Tommy from the dining table where he had spread out his homework. "In about 30 minutes, I guess. She always comes right on time, doesn't she?" Melissa answered with a smile. Tommy happily jumped down from his chair and ran to the window. "I want Grandma's soup. Do you think she'll make it today?" Melissa gently stroked her son's hair. "Probably. She mentioned it on the phone." Melissa and Tommy's life was unimaginable without the presence of her mother, Patricia Morrison. Patricia was a former home economics teacher who had been living alone in the same county since she lost her husband Robert to a heart attack 5 years ago. However, she visited her daughter's home 2 or 3 times a week to look after her grandson Tommy and help with household chores. Especially since Tommy was born, Patricia's visits had become indispensable to the family. While Melissa was busy working as a pediatric nurse at Mount Sinai Hospital, Patricia often took care of her grandson. Melissa's husband James also worked as a project manager at an IT company in Manhattan, and both led busy working lives. "When is Dad coming home?" Tommy asked. "Around 7, I suppose. He's busy with a new project," Melissa replied. James was a serious and family-oriented husband. Though he sometimes came home late due to work, he valued time with his family and always took Tommy to the park or movies on weekends. The doorbell rang, and Tommy ran out shouting, "Grandma." Melissa followed him with a smile. When they opened the door, Patricia was standing there with shopping bags in both hands. Her face was wrapped in her usual gentle smile. Tommy jumped toward his grandmother. "Hello, my precious grandson." Patricia put down her shopping bags and hugged Tommy. "How was your day? Did you enjoy school?" "Yes. We learned about dinosaurs in science class." Tommy began talking excitedly. Melissa took her mother's shopping bags and carried them to the kitchen. "You've been shopping again, Mom." "Just a little," Patricia said with a laugh as she entered the kitchen. "It's all things Tommy likes." When they opened the bags, they found fresh vegetables, chicken, and various herbs. Melissa immediately realized what this meant. "You're planning to make your soup, aren't you?" "Yes." Tommy requested it on the phone. Patricia took out an apron and put it on. "Would you like to help?" Melissa nodded happily. Patricia's special chicken soup was everyone's favorite. That soup, which used more than 20 herbs and vegetables, was called magic soup among the family. Whenever Tommy caught a cold or Melissa was tired from work, Patricia's soup always cheered them up. "Your soup is truly magical, Mom." Even when Tommy had a fever, he got better overnight, Melissa said while cutting vegetables. "You're exaggerating," Patricia replied while putting chicken in the pot. "But it's a recipe I learned from my mother. It's been passed down for 4 generations." Tommy watched the two of them intently. "Grandma's soup is the best in the world. When I grow up, I want Grandma to teach me how to make it." Patricia gently stroked her grandson's head. "Of course, Tommy. But until then, you need to learn to eat more vegetables." She winked. Melissa felt happy watching the relationship between her mother and son. Patricia was the perfect grandmother. Her presence was a great support for the family. Meanwhile, James's mother, Carol Wilson, lived in Dallas, Texas. She came from a wealthy family and only visited a few times a year. Carol always behaved politely, but occasionally made small criticisms or sarcastic remarks toward Melissa and Patricia. Deep down, she wasn't happy that James had married Melissa, who came from an ordinary family. "Have you heard from James's mother recently?" Patricia casually asked. Melissa's expression clouded slightly. "We had a video call last week. She wanted to talk to Tommy. It must be difficult for her, wanting to see her grandson but living so far away," Patricia said sympathetically. In truth, Carol hadn't tried to deepen her relationship with her grandson very much. She would send Tommy expensive toys but didn't spend time with him like Patricia did. That evening, as the aroma of soup filled the house, Melissa's cell phone rang. Looking at the screen, she saw it was from Carol. "Hello, Carol," Melissa answered with a slightly tense voice. "Melissa, I have bad news," Carol's voice sounded concerned. "I heard Patricia is bedridden with bronchitis. James told me." Melissa looked at her mother. Patricia had been coughing a little last week, but she looked fine now. "Yes, but she's better now. Don't worry." "No, I was worried about all of you," Carol said. "I'm coming by plane tomorrow." Melissa was surprised. "What?" "But Mom is all ready. There's no room for discussion. Family should help each other in times of need. I'll arrive tomorrow evening," Carol said decisively and hung up. Melissa turned back to Patricia. "It seems Carol is coming tomorrow. She heard you were sick." Patricia showed a surprised expression. "Me? I just had a little cough." "But she seems determined. There might be some other reason," Melissa said anxiously. Patricia shrugged. "Well, she's family, so let's welcome her." The next day, Carol arrived. She was standing at the entrance, dragging an expensive suitcase. "Melissa, James, it's been a while," Carol said in a sophisticated tone. "I heard Patricia was unwell, so I flew over right away. I'll help with the housework." Melissa welcomed her mother-in-law with a slightly confused expression. "Thank you, Carol. But such a sudden visit." "Family should help each other in times of need," Carol stated firmly. "Where's Tommy? Grandma has a present for him." Hearing those words, Tommy came running from the living room. "Grandma Carol." Carol hugged her grandson with a smile. "My precious grandson. I brought this from Dallas." She took out a large package. Tommy excitedly opened the package and shouted with joy when he found the latest model of a game console. "Wow! Thank you, Grandma Carol." Melissa watched the scene with some unease. Carol's sudden visit and expensive present, she felt there might be some intention behind it. Over the days following Carol's arrival, the atmosphere in the home began to subtly change. Carol kept buying Tommy expensive toys and games, trying to interfere with the relationship Patricia had built with her grandson over the years. She also commented on Patricia's cooking, saying things like, "That's old-fashioned," or "We should have healthier meals," while starting to cook in the kitchen herself. On Sunday, the weekend, Patricia's condition had fully recovered, family life had outwardly returned to normal. The morning light streamed into the dining room, and Tommy was energetically talking while shoveling down his breakfast cereal. "Hey, I want Grandma's soup today," Tommy suddenly said. "That magic soup." Melissa smiled while pouring coffee at the kitchen counter. "I'll check with Mom. I wonder if she was planning to come today." "I'll call her," Carol immediately offered. She had been trying to have a say in everything around the house these past few days. "Since Patricia is feeling better, let's make a special lunch for Tommy." Carol moved to the living room to make the call. Melissa watched her mother-in-law out of the corner of her eye, remembering the puzzling behavior she had witnessed recently. However, she tried to dismiss her suspicions. "I'm being too distrustful," she told herself. An hour later, Patricia arrived with shopping bags full of ingredients in both hands. She looked bright, appearing to have fully regained her health. "Tommy, I heard you requested Grandma's special soup," Patricia said while hugging her grandson. "Yes. I want to eat it." Tommy jumped around his grandmother with joy. Carol came out from the living room and offered, "I'll help with the cooking." Patricia responded with slight hesitation, "Yes, of course." Patricia had brought all the ingredients for the soup: chicken, carrots, celery, onions, garlic, ginger, and a jar of homemade blended spices containing 15 kinds of herbs. She spread the ingredients out on the counter, explaining them carefully. "This is my special blend. It's a family secret." Patricia held up a small brown jar to show. Carol approached, showing interest. "My, how lovely. What herbs are in it?" "That's a secret," Patricia smiled. "But I plan to teach Tommy when he grows up." Carol's expression clouded for a moment. Secret recipes seem so old-fashioned. Melissa sensed the subtle tension between the two grandmothers. She moved to the living room with Tommy to help with his homework. "Let's leave the cooking to the grandmothers." Occasionally, the sound of the two women's conversation and pot stirring could be heard from the kitchen. Several times, Melissa noticed Carol leaving the kitchen, going to her room, or stepping outside. Each time, she seemed to be holding a small bottle. Melissa recalled recent events and felt a pang of anxiety, but again chided herself. "Mom, how are you feeling? Are you completely better?" Melissa asked, peering into the kitchen. Patricia turned around while stirring a large pot. "Yes, I'm completely fine now. I've been looking forward to making my special soup for Tommy." Just then, Carol returned to the kitchen. A friendly smile appeared on her face, but it seemed somewhat calculated. "Patricia, your recipe is truly wonderful. Could you teach me some tricks?" Carol asked in a sweet voice. "Thank you, Carol," Patricia answered honestly. "I'm not doing anything special. I just cook with love." Melissa was helping Tommy with his math homework while listening to this conversation from the living room. She couldn't shake the feeling that something about Carol's behavior seemed unnatural. As the aroma of soup began to fill the house, Tommy sniffed appreciatively, neglecting his homework. "It smells delicious. Can we eat it soon?" "In about 30 minutes, I think," Melissa said, stroking her son's head. "Let's finish your homework until then." In the kitchen, Patricia continued working carefully, adding herbs and spices bit by bit as if casting a spell on the soup. Carol stood nearby, occasionally asking questions or expressing admiration. "May I taste it?" Carol asked. Of course, Patricia handed her a wooden spoon. Carol sipped the soup and said, "Wonderful. But it could use a bit more flavor." "Do you think so?" Patricia tilted her head. "I think it's perfect as is. Would you let me try my idea?" Carol asked with pleading eyes. Patricia hesitated a bit but conceded, "Well, all right. I'll go to the restroom for a moment." While Patricia was away from the kitchen, Carol quickly took out a small bottle from her pocket. She secretly added tarragon, an herb, to the soup. Carol had researched online beforehand and knew that tarragon could cause allergic reactions in some people, especially children. She had also secretly checked Tommy's hospital records and discovered he might have a mild herb allergy. She calculated that a small amount wouldn't cause severe symptoms but could result in rashes, stomach pain, or difficulty breathing. When Patricia returned, Carol behaved as if nothing had happened. "It's almost done, isn't it?" "Yes," Patricia said while stirring the pot. "Let's turn off the heat and let it sit for a while. The flavor will intensify." When the soup was ready, the family gathered around the dining table. Freshly baked bread and a fresh salad were also on the table, creating the warm atmosphere of a family Sunday lunch. Carol sat next to Tommy and said, "This is Grandma's soup. It looks especially delicious," encouraging Tommy to try the soup. Patricia tasted the soup and tilted her head. "Does it taste different from usual?" "I added a little herb. It enhances the flavor," Carol answered casually. Melissa felt anxiety at those words, but since her mother didn't seem particularly concerned, she remained silent. Tommy picked up his spoon and said, "Grandma's special soup. I love it," and took a sip. "Tommy, eat slowly. It's hot," Patricia cautioned. "But it looks really delicious." "I think I'll have some too," Carol said, ladling soup into her own bowl. Melissa noticed that while Carol had served herself soup, she hardly touched it. Carol just stirred the soup without actually eating it. Melissa found this strange but didn't say anything. As soon as Tommy took a spoonful, his expression changed. At first he said, "Delicious," but soon began saying, "My stomach feels weird." Melissa watched her son with concern as his complexion began to change. "Tommy, are you okay?" Melissa asked. Instead of answering, Tommy clutched his throat painfully. Red rashes began to appear on his neck and arms. "My throat, it hurts." Seconds later, Tommy's breathing became labored, and he slid from his chair, collapsing to the floor. "Tommy! Tommy! What's wrong?" Melissa panicked as she rushed to her son. Her nursing training instantly kicked in. Tommy murmured painfully, "It hurts. I can't breathe." Patricia said in a trembling voice, "Could it be my soup?" But never once before. Carol, pretending to be calm, said, "It might be an allergic reaction. We need to get him to the hospital quickly." Melissa desperately tried to regain her composure. "Call an ambulance." She ran to get Tommy's emergency EpiPen adrenaline auto-injector for allergies while calling James. She pulled the medication from the drawer and quickly administered it to her son. Thanks to the EpiPen, the symptoms subsided a little, but Tommy's condition was still dangerous. His skin was bright red and swollen, and wheezing could be heard. The ambulance siren approached. Melissa touched Tommy's forehead with trembling hands. "It's okay, baby. Mama's here with you." The paramedics arrived and immediately began treating Tommy. They attached an oxygen mask to him and checked his vital signs. "These are symptoms of anaphylactic shock," one of the paramedics said. "What did he eat?" "Soup," Melissa answered quickly. "But there's never been any problem before." "We'll take a sample," the paramedic said. "It can be tested at the hospital." Tommy was loaded into the ambulance with Melissa accompanying him. She contacted her husband James and told him to meet them at the hospital. Patricia and Carol would follow in their own car. In the hospital emergency room, a team of doctors attended to Tommy. With additional doses of adrenaline and intravenous treatment, Tommy's condition gradually stabilized. Melissa sat by her son's bedside, holding his small hand tightly. James rushed to the hospital. "How is he?" "How's Tommy?" he asked breathlessly. "He's stable now," Melissa answered in a tired voice. "But..." A doctor approached with a chart, his expression serious, and began questioning Melissa. "Do you know what was in this soup?" the doctor asked. "Your child has had a strong allergic reaction. He seems to be reacting particularly to an herb called tarragon. Melissa gripped the spoon with trembling hands. It's my mother's special soup, but there's never been any problem before. Tarragon. My mother would never have used such an herb. Melissa slowly looked at her mother. Patricia stood rooted to the spot, her face pale. I didn't put anything like that in, Patricia said desperately. Just the usual ingredients. I've never used tarragon. Carol turned to Patricia with a concerned face and said, but when I was watching, you definitely put in some special spice, didn't you? A green herb. Mom, is that true? Melissa looked at her mother with skeptical eyes. That's impossible. Patricia cried with tears in her eyes. I would never do anything to hurt Tommy. Tarragon is not in my blend. The doctor looked at the three women and said in a calm voice, we've taken a sample of the soup for detailed testing. Tommy will need to stay in the hospital until his condition stabilizes. The doctor further explained that upon checking Tommy's past medical history, it was noted that he had undergone allergy testing a year ago, and mild allergic reactions to certain herbs, including tarragon, had been recorded. However, this information hadn't been emphasized much, and it was possible that both Patricia and Melissa hadn't considered it important. Melissa was confused. She was tormented by the suspicion that her mother might be hiding something. She couldn't understand why her mother's cooking, which she had trusted for years, had suddenly harmed Tommy. At the same time, she felt something off about Carol's attitude. Her eyes darted between the two women standing outside the hospital room. One was the mother who had raised her, the other was her husband's mother. At this point, Melissa's heart was full of confusion and doubt. She sat by her son's bedside, holding his small hand, unsure whom to believe. Tommy stayed in the hospital overnight, receiving treatment until his symptoms subsided. Melissa took a short nap on the small sofa in the hospital room and was relieved by James, who had taken the day off work, in the morning. He's going to be fine now, the doctor said reassuringly. We'd like to keep him under observation today as a precautionary measure, but he should be able to go home tomorrow. Melissa sighed with relief, but the doubts in her heart didn't disappear. Patricia had sat in the hospital waiting room all night, looking exhausted. Carol had also waited but remained relatively calm, occasionally asking questions of the nurses or going to buy coffee. When they returned home, Carol repeatedly made statements that blamed Patricia. I'm not blaming Patricia. But memory can decline with age, you know. Maybe she accidentally put something in. Mom never makes mistakes with cooking, at least not until now, Melissa argued, but seeds of doubt had been planted. Patricia was deeply hurt hearing such conversations. There is no tarragon in my blend spices, she asserted repeatedly, but Carol kept saying, maybe you just didn't notice. James suffered between his wife and mother. Melissa, you don't really think your mother did it on purpose, do you? Of course not. But Mom and Carol were talking about something in the kitchen at that time. And the doctor said something different had been added. Melissa was confused. Patricia returned to her own home in shock and stopped answering phone calls from Melissa. Meanwhile, Carol spent more and more time with Tommy, trying to establish herself as the trustworthy grandmother. A few days later, the hospital called with the test results. Tarragon had been detected in the soup. Melissa, with her nursing intuition and sense of unease, began her own investigation. She asked a colleague at the hospital to show her the details of the test results and discovered that the amount of tarragon in the soup was unnaturally high for normal cooking. While Carol was out, Melissa looked around her mother-in-law's room. She discovered a small bottle of tarragon in Carol's bag, along with a printout from the internet titled, Common Herbs and Spices That Cause Allergic Reactions. Even more shockingly, she found a copy of Tommy's hospital records with information about tarragon allergies marked with a red line. Could it be my mother-in-law? Melissa gathered the evidence with trembling hands. She showed the evidence to James, but at first, he couldn't believe it. No, that can't be. Mother wouldn't. This is the evidence, Melissa said calmly. Carol did it deliberately. To make my mother look bad. James changed color as he looked at the evidence. Why would Mother do such a thing? Your mother wanted to destroy our relationship with my mother and monopolize her relationship with Tommy. Although shocked, James had to accept the facts. Melissa contacted Patricia and told her the truth. Patricia returned to the house in tears. I really thought I might have made some mistake. Patricia said in a trembling voice. I'm sorry, Mom. For doubting you. Melissa hugged her mother. The family discussed how to confront Carol with the truth. They decided it was important not only to confront her with the facts but also to understand why she had taken such actions. They were determined to face the situation calmly to restore their child's safety and family bonds. A few days after Tommy was discharged from the hospital, they chose a time after Tommy had gone to bed. The evidence, the bottle of tarragon, the printouts, and copies of the hospital records, was laid out in the living room. Carol, what are these found in your bag? Melissa asked calmly. Carol was momentarily flustered but quickly composed herself. What do you mean? Tarragon. The herb Tommy is allergic to. And these printouts, copies of Tommy's hospital records. Those are, just for cooking reference, Carol made excuses. The records. James showed them to me. Mother, I never showed you such things, James said with a stern expression. Carol's attitude changed completely as she was cornered. She cried out tearfully, you wouldn't understand. How lonely I've been. Nothing can excuse putting a child in danger, Melissa said in a trembling voice. Your mother was playing the perfect grandmother and trying to take my place. James and Tommy are my family too. Carol became emotional. James looked at his mother with a confused expression. Why? What could you gain by doing this? Ever since you got married, you've always favored this family, Carol said crying. Patricia comes over several times a week, makes special meals. I love Tommy just as much. So you deliberately sent Tommy to the hospital? Melissa's voice shook with anger. I knew such a small amount wouldn't cause serious harm. Carol admitted. I just wanted to make it seem like there was a problem with Patricia's cooking, so I would have more opportunities to cook. Patricia, who had been listening quietly, spoke up. Carol, I can understand your feelings. But this approach is wrong. We're not competitors. James turned to his mother with a stern expression. Mom, I love Melissa. And Patricia is an important part of our family. What you did is unforgivable. James, please. Don't throw me out, Carol panicked. I regret it. I'll never do such a thing again. We need time to think calmly now, James said resolutely. We must prioritize Tommy's safety. At that moment, Tommy came down the stairs and looked anxious, seeing everyone's serious expressions. What's wrong? Is everyone angry? Patricia approached her grandson with a smile. It's okay, Tommy. We're just having an adult discussion. Grandma, make your soup again. I'm fine now, Tommy said innocently. Of course, Tommy. Next time I'll make an even more delicious soup, Patricia hugged her grandson. Hearing Tommy's pure words, Carol realized the seriousness of what she had done. Tears of regret welled in her eyes. The next day, Carol was packing her bags to return to Texas. Before departing, she formally apologized to Melissa and James. "I'm truly sorry, driven by jealousy, I did something irreparable." "It's not easy to forgive," Melissa said, but continued in a slightly softer voice, "but you are James's mother and Tommy's grandmother. I hope the day will come when we can repair our relationship." Before Carol got into the taxi, Patricia approached and made a surprising suggestion. "Next time you visit, let's cook together. I'll really teach you my soup recipe." Carol was surprised and shed tears of gratitude. "Patricia, showing such kindness, thank you. I'll really change." Melissa and James were surprised by this unexpected seed of reconciliation but found hope in the possibility that family bonds could gradually be repaired. They had taken the first step toward becoming a stronger family by overcoming a difficult period. 6 months later, the autumn sunlight once again warmly illuminated the living room of the Wilson home. Family relationships were slowly being repaired. Carol had begun psychological counseling immediately after returning to Texas. She was deeply confronting her actions and emotions, working on the roots of her jealousy and desire for control. Every Sunday, Carol had time to talk with Tommy via video call and regularly wrote letters to Melissa and James. For Tommy in particular, she sent handmade presents rather than expensive toys. Melissa gently explained to Tommy, "Grandma Carol was sick, but she's trying to get better now." Tommy accepted the situation with childlike purity and expressed joy at Carol's letters and gifts. Meanwhile, the bond between Melissa and her mother Patricia had deepened even further. The two began attending cooking classes together on weekends, enjoying the challenge of trying new recipes. "After that incident, our bond seems to have become even stronger," Patricia said one day while cooking. "Mom, I truly feel sorry for doubting you." Melissa still felt guilty. "Don't worry about it," Patricia took her daughter's hand. "A mother would do anything to protect her child. You did the right thing." As Thanksgiving approached, the family decided to invite Carol for a short stay again. Melissa initially hesitated, but agreed when James said he wanted to believe in Carol's change, and Tommy said, "I want to see Grandma Carol." Carol brought a letter of recommendation from her doctor showing the results of her psychological therapy and arrived with a clearly different, humble attitude than before. She showed respect to Patricia and demonstrated a sincere effort to repair her relationship with the family. On the day Carol arrived, Tommy was initially cautious, but gradually opened his heart to Carol's sincere attitude and gentle behavior. Carol had brought a hand-knitted sweater she made herself and a dinosaur book that Tommy liked. "Patricia, is your offer to teach me your special soup recipe still valid?" Carol timidly asked while drinking coffee in the living room. "Of course," Patricia smiled. "Shall we make it for dinner today?" "Tommy, you'll help us, won't you?" "Yes. I've gotten good at cutting carrots," Tommy said energetically. That afternoon, Patricia, Carol, and Tommy began cooking together in the kitchen. Patricia carefully taught how to make the secret blend of spices for the soup, and Carol eagerly took notes while learning. Melissa watched the three of them through the door gap, feeling the family's healing process. "The secret is in choosing the ingredients and simmering for a long time," Patricia explained. "And most importantly, cooking with love." "Wonderful," Carol sincerely admired. "I want to be able to make my family happy with cooking too. In the true sense." Watching from the kitchen door, Melissa murmured softly, "She's really changed." James approached from behind and placed his hand on his wife's shoulder. "People can change. Mom is genuinely remorseful." At dinner, soup made jointly by Patricia and Carol was served. Tommy first sipped a spoonful with a slightly nervous look but immediately broke into a smile. "Delicious. When both grandmas make it, it's even better. The whole family enjoyed the meal with smiles, feeling past wounds gradually healing. At the dinner table, Carol quietly stood up and again conveyed her feelings to the family. "I committed a grave error," Carol said with a serious expression. "But now I'm learning the true meaning of family. That cooperation, not competition, and love, not control, are important. I will never again act out of jealousy or possessiveness." "Mom, people really can change," James said with a moved expression. "We'll make an effort too. Families don't have to be perfect," Melissa smiled gently. "It's good if we can understand, forgive, and grow together." From that day on, Carol's life changed dramatically. When she returned to Texas, she sold her large house and moved to a small apartment. She saved part of the extra money as an education fund for her grandson Tommy and used the rest to start running cooking classes for seniors at a local community center. She began sharing what she had learned from her experience with others, sometimes honestly talking about her mistakes and warning about the dangers of jealousy and possessiveness in relationships. Her frankness and sincerity earned the respect of many. She had regular video calls with Tommy and spent time with the family during holidays. Carol came to know the joy of building a relationship with her grandson out of pure love, not anxiety or jealousy. She developed a friendship-like relationship with Patricia where they exchanged cooking recipes, and the two occasionally co-managed the cooking for family gatherings. Carol's life became richer than before, and she was able to become a grandmother, in the true sense of the word for the first time. Melissa and James realized that their relationship had grown stronger through this difficult experience. And Tommy grew up happily surrounded by two loving grandmothers. One day, Tommy came home from school and asked, "Mom, which grandma's soup is it today?" Melissa smiled and answered, "Today is special. It's a new recipe soup with plenty of love from both grandmas." The entire family had learned the important lesson that love is not about possession but about giving freely to each other. And that any wound can be healed with time and sincerity, just like grandma's special soup.